Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations of Deception. Maxwell Max, Riker never trusted easily. 15 years in naval intelligence had taught him to see the angles, anticipate betrayal, and always have contingencies. But 4 years ago, when he met Audrey Prescott at a charity gala in Boston, something changed. Her hazel eyes carried a warmth that melted the ice around his heart, and for the first time, Max lowered his guard. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Within 6 months, they were married in a small ceremony on the New England coast. A year later, their son Lucas was born. "He has your eyes," Audrey had whispered in the hospital room. Calculating, even as a newborn. Max had laughed it off then. He shouldn't have. When Max decided to leave naval intelligence for private security consulting, Audrey supported him enthusiastically. His new venture, Sentinel Security Solutions, grew rapidly. High-profile clients, government contracts, and a reputation for discretion made the company wildly successful. By Lucas's 4th birthday, Max had amassed a fortune exceeding $30 million. The wealth attracted Audrey's mother, Vivian Prescott, like a moth to flame. A retired psychiatrist with expensive tastes, Vivian had initially disapproved of Max, considering him beneath her daughter. But when the money started flowing, she became an ever-present fixture in their waterfront mansion. "Families should stick together," she'd say, refilling her crystal glass with imported scotch. "Blood is thicker than water." Max never fully trusted Vivian, but he tolerated her for Audrey's sake. He didn't realize that mother and daughter shared more than genes. They shared a capacity for deception that would make his intelligence trainers proud. In his home office overlooking Boston Harbor, Max reviewed quarterly reports when his private phone buzzed. The message was from Benjamin Reynolds, his former handler and one of the few people Max still trusted. "Package delivered. Contents concerning. Meet tonight." Max deleted the message and checked his security monitors. Lucas was playing in the garden with his nanny, Sophie. Audrey was in the master bedroom on a call. Vivian was in the guest house. All normal, yet something felt off. That evening, Max told Audrey he had a business emergency. "Take all the time you need," she said, kissing him softly. "Lucas and I will be fine." "Actually," Max replied, "I thought Lucas might enjoy coming with me. We'll stop for ice cream on the way back." A flash of something, irritation, fear, crossed Audrey's face before her practiced smile returned. "Of course, darling. Mother and I will have a girls' night." In a nondescript diner outside the city, Benjamin slid a manila envelope across the table while Lucas enjoyed his chocolate sundae. "Surveillance photos," Benjamin explained quietly. "Started as routine background on a potential client, then things got interesting." Max flipped through the images. Audrey entering an upscale hotel. Audrey in deep conversation with a man Max didn't recognize. Audrey and the man kissing in an elevator. "Who is he?" Max asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Preston Wallace. Old money from Philadelphia. On paper, he runs a charitable foundation. In reality, it's a sophisticated money laundering operation. We've had eyes on him for years." Max studied the final photo. Audrey, Preston, and Vivian, all three laughing together on the deck of a yacht. "There's more," Benjamin continued. "Financial analysis shows unusual patterns in your accounts. Small amounts redirected through shell companies. Nearly untraceable. How much?" "About 3 million so far." "And Max," Benjamin hesitated. "There's chatter about something bigger in the works." Very concerning chatter. On the drive home, Max watched Lucas in the rearview mirror. The boy was falling asleep, clutching his favorite stuffed whale. Max had never killed anyone outside of sanctioned operations, but looking at his son, he knew he would do anything to protect him. Instead of heading home, Max drove to his office building. In the basement, behind a biometric lock, was a room only he could access. Inside were identities, passports, cash, weapons, remnants of his former life, insurance for scenarios he hoped would never materialize. Now it seemed they would. Chapter 2. Hidden Currents. For the next 2 weeks, Max became the perfect husband. He brought Audrey flowers, arranged date nights, and surprised her with expensive jewelry. He told her business was booming and suggested they celebrate with a weekend cruise on their yacht, the Siren's Call. The three of us should go, Audrey suggested over dinner. You, me, and Lucas. And your mother, Max added, watching her reaction carefully. She loves being on the water. Audrey's hesitation was almost imperceptible. Of course, Mother would love that. In his hidden study, Max reviewed the evidence Benjamin had gathered. Preston Wallace had connections to Russian oligarchs and South American cartels. The money laundering operation was sophisticated, but the real concern was a series of encrypted messages suggesting a planned removal and asset acquisition. Max was the removal. The assets were his company and fortune. He installed microscopic cameras throughout the house and yacht, tapped phones, and placed tracking devices in family vehicles. What he discovered confirmed his worst fears. Audrey and Vivian had been plotting with Preston for over a year. He's too cautious, Audrey told Preston during a hotel meeting. Everything is locked down tight. The only way to access the bulk of his fortune is through his death. And the prenup? Preston asked. Ironclad, Vivian interjected. But with him gone and Audrey as Lucas's guardian, she'd control everything until the boy turns 25. More than enough time. The plan needs to be perfect, Preston insisted. No evidence, no suspicion. A tragic accident at sea. Max felt a cold rage building as he watched them discuss his murder so casually. He began preparing countermeasures, creating blind spots in his surveillance where they would think themselves unobserved. 3 days before the planned cruise, Max took Lucas to Dr. Gregory West, a trusted friend and medical professional. I need to know if he's mine, Max said bluntly after Lucas had gone to play in the adjacent room. Gregory's expression was grim. May I ask why you suspect otherwise? Just run the test, Max replied. Urgent and confidential. The next day, Gregory called with the results. DNA confirms it. Max Lucas is definitely your biological son. Relief flooded through Max, followed by renewed determination. They wouldn't just be attempting to kill him. They would be trying to steal his son. On the eve of the cruise, Max asked Sophie, Lucas's nanny, to come to his office. I've always valued your discretion and loyalty, he told the young woman. Now I need both more than ever. Sophie had been with them since Lucas was born. Max had personally selected her, a former military nurse with training in combat situations, qualifications Audrey had never questioned. Whatever you need, Mr. Riker, Sophie replied. Max handed her an envelope. If anything happens to me, follow these instructions exactly. Lucas's life may depend on it. That night, as Audrey slept beside him, Max stared at the ceiling. The woman he had loved, or thought he had loved, was planning his murder. The mother of his child wanted him erased from existence. The depth of the betrayal was almost incomprehensible. But Max had survived in a world where trust was a liability. He hadn't just been trained to detect betrayal. He'd been trained to turn it against his enemies. They thought he was the prey. They were wrong. Chapter 3. The Plunge. The morning of the cruise dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for sailing or for murder. Max loaded the final supplies onto the Siren's Call, while Audrey supervised Lucas's packing. Vivian arrived with enough luggage for a month-long voyage, though they were only planned to be out for the weekend. I like to be prepared, she explained with a tight smile. As they pulled away from the marina, Max noticed a sleek black sedan in the parking lot. Preston Wallace watching from a distance. Max pretended not to see, acting the part of the oblivious husband. Out on the open water, Max played the role perfectly. Attentive father, loving husband, tolerant son-in-law. He mixed drinks, prepared lunch, and took Lucas to the bow to watch for dolphins. They're magical creatures, Max told his son. They know things about the sea that humans can never understand. Like what, Daddy? Lucas asked, eyes wide with wonder. Like how to survive when everything seems hopeless. By late afternoon, they were 20 miles offshore. Max had deliberately disabled the boat's tracking systems and emergency beacon, a fact he knew Audrey had noted with satisfaction. Let's have champagne, Audrey suggested as the sun began to set, to celebrate our beautiful family. Max poured drinks for the adults and juice for Lucas. He pretended to sip his champagne while watching Audrey and Vivian exchange glances. "Why don't you show Lucas that trick with the dolphins?" Audrey suggested. "The one where you splash the water to call them?" Max nodded, taking Lucas's hand. "Let's go to the rear deck. Better visibility there." As they stood at the stern, splashing water and laughing, Max felt rather than saw Audrey and Vivian approaching from behind. He continued playing with Lucas, seemingly oblivious to the danger. The push, when it came, was forceful, meant to send both him and Lucas over the railing into the churning wake of the yacht. Max had been ready. As he felt hands on his back, he twisted, pulling Lucas close to his chest and grabbing the railing with his free hand. The momentum carried them over, but instead of plunging helplessly into the sea, Max controlled their fall, using his body to shield Lucas from impact. Just before they hit the water, he heard Vivian's cold voice. "You'll be erased like you never existed." And Audrey's chilling whisper, "Goodbye, useless ones." The Atlantic in September was cold enough to kill within hours. Max had prepared for this, wearing a thin wetsuit under his clothes and securing a waterproof pouch to his ankle. As they surfaced, he quickly deployed a compact, inflatable float collar around Lucas's neck. "Hold tight, buddy," he whispered to his terrified son. "Daddy's got you. Remember our secret game? The one where we pretend to be invisible? We're going to play that now." From above, Audrey and Vivian would see only empty water. The yacht continued forward, gradually shrinking into the distance. "Aren't they coming back?" Lucas asked, shivering despite the float keeping him above water. "No, buddy, but we don't need them to." Max removed the waterproof pouch, extracting a compact GPS transmitter. He activated it with a 3-digit code. Help is already on the way. 40 minutes later, as hypothermia began to threaten, a sleek speedboat approached. Benjamin Reynolds cut the engine, helping Max and Lucas aboard. "Right on schedule," Benjamin noted grimly. "They didn't even circle back to check." "They thought they didn't need to," Max replied, wrapping Lucas in thermal blankets. "The yacht will dock at the marina around 10 p.m., Benjamin said. "From there, they'll report you missing tomorrow morning. Enough time lag to ensure no real search could find you alive." Max nodded, hugging his confused son close. "Lucas, this is my good friend Ben. We need to stay with him for a while, okay? It's part of our invisible game." As the speedboat headed not toward Boston, but to a private dock in a secluded cove, Max looked out at the darkening horizon. The game had only just begun. Chapter 4: Ghosts in the Shadows. The safe house was a rustic cabin nestled in the woods of coastal Maine, far from curious eyes and digital footprints. Max had purchased it years ago under a shell corporation, one of several properties unknown to Audrey or anyone else. "How long do we stay here, Daddy?" Lucas asked on their third morning, as Max prepared a simple breakfast of eggs and toast. "Not too long, buddy. Just until I finish my special work project." Sophie arrived that afternoon, bringing supplies and a familiar present for Lucas. The boy ran to her, excited to see a friendly face. "Everything in place?" Max asked her quietly while Lucas explored the toy box Sophie had brought. "Yes, sir. The surveillance is active. They reported you both missing yesterday morning, as expected." Mrs. Riker gave a very convincing performance for the Coast Guard, hysterical with grief. "And the other matter?" "Handled. Drive West has prepared everything according to your specifications." Max nodded, his expression grave. "You understand what happens next?" "I do," Sophie replied. "And I'm prepared. Lucas will be safe with me." That evening, after Lucas was asleep, Max and Benjamin reviewed the surveillance footage from the Riker mansion. Audrey sat in the living room, accepting condolences from friends with tears streaming down her face. Vivian hovered nearby, the perfect image of a grieving grandmother. "Oscar-worthy performances," Benjamin muttered. Later, Preston Wallace arrived, ostensibly as a family friend offering support. The cameras captured their conversation in the kitchen, voices low. "The Coast Guard is expanding the search area tomorrow," Audrey said. "But they've already told me privately that survival was impossible. The water temperature, the distance from shore." "How long until it's official?" Preston asked. "A week. maybe 2 before they're declared presumed dead. Then the probate process begins. And the company? Preston Prest. Majority ownership transfers to me as Lucas's guardian. The board can't block it. It's in the corporate bylaws. Max watched with cold attachment. The woman who had shared his bed for 5 years, who had given birth to his son, was now calculating the hours until his death could be legally established. "What's your plan?" Benjamin asked as the video feed continued. "They think they're hunters," Max replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm going to show them what it means to be hunted." Over the next week, Max methodically prepared his counterattack. Using Benjamin's connections and his own considerable resources, he built a comprehensive profile of Preston Wallace's criminal enterprise. Shell companies, money laundering routes, corrupt officials, all meticulously documented. "This is enough to put him away for decades," Benjamin observed, reviewing the evidence. "Prison is too good for him," Max replied. "I want him destroyed, not just incarcerated." Max turned his attention to Audrey's past, uncovering secrets she had carefully concealed. Before meeting Max, she had been involved in a series of calculated relationships with wealthy men, each ending when their usefulness expired. There were restraining orders that had been sealed, allegations of theft that had been settled privately. Vivian's history revealed a pattern of enabling and coordinating her daughter's predatory behavior. The respected psychiatrist had used her professional insights to help Audrey identify and manipulate vulnerable targets. 10 days after their deaths, Max received the call he'd been waiting for. The Coast Guard had officially suspended the search and rescue operation. The news channels reported the tragic story: successful businessman and his young son presumed dead in a boating accident. That evening, Max sat with Lucas on the cabin porch, watching the sunset. "Daddy, are we still playing the invisible game?" the boy asked. Max pulled his son close. "Yes, but not for much longer. Soon we'll play a new game. It's called Justice." The next morning, Max left Lucas in Sophie's capable hands and departed with Benjamin. Their destination, a private medical facility owned by Dr. Gregory West. "Everything is prepared," Drive West assured them. "But I must ask again, are you certain about this? The psychological impact alone." "I'm certain," Max interrupted. "They've already killed me in the eyes of the world. Now I'll use that death to bring them down." The procedure took 6 hours. When it was complete, Max Riker no longer existed. In his place was Robert Caldwell, a man with different facial features, different fingerprints, and a completely legitimate identity. "The changes are subtle enough to pass casual inspection," Drive West explained, "but significant enough to defeat facial recognition and fool those who knew you, especially since no one is looking for you alive." "How long until I'm fully healed?" Max, now Robert, asked. 2 weeks before the swelling completely subsides. A month before you should risk close contact with anyone who knew you before." Max nodded. Perfect timing. Chapter 5. Shadows into Light. The funeral was a somber affair, attended by Boston's elite. Audrey Riker, elegant in black, accepted condolences with dignified grief. Vivian stood beside her, a supportive arm around her daughter's waist. In the front row, Preston Wallace sat as a close family friend. Among the mourners, a nondescript man in sunglasses observed from a distance. Robert Caldwell, formerly Max Riker, watched his own funeral with detached fascination. The twin caskets, one large, one small, were merely for show. The Coast Guard had recovered no bodies, but ceremony demanded closure. Max noted with grim satisfaction how Audrey occasionally glanced at them, as if to reassure herself that her plan had succeeded. Following the funeral, the mourners gathered at the Riker mansion. Robert slipped inside, another anonymous face in the crowd of Boston's wealthy and connected. He overheard snippets of conversation. "Such a tragedy. She's so strong considering. The company will need strong leadership now." Robert approached Preston Wallace, introducing himself as a potential investor. Preston, always alert to financial opportunities, engaged eagerly. "My portfolio is diverse," Robert explained, "but I'm looking for something with more creative financial structures." Preston's eyes lit with recognition of a kindred spirit. "Perhaps we should discuss this further in private." My foundation is always seeking like-minded partners. I'd like that, Robert replied, handing Preston a business card. Call me when the morning period feels less restrictive. That evening, from his hotel room, Robert watched the surveillance feeds from the Riker mansion. The guests had departed, leaving Audrey, Vivian, and Preston alone. God, I thought they'd never leave. Audrey sighed, kicking off her heels and pouring a generous glass of whiskey. You played your part beautifully, Preston told her, loosening his tie. The grieving widow, devastated but dignified. Simply perfect. Vivian raised her glass. To new beginnings, and to Max and Lucas Riker. May they rest in peace at the bottom of the Atlantic. Their laughter echoed through the empty house, cutting through Robert like a knife. He had known their betrayal was cold and calculated, but seeing their celebration of his death, and worse, his son's death, ignited something primal within him. Robert, Benjamin's voice came through the secure line. The final preparations are in place. Sophie and Lucas arrived safely at the secondary location. Good, Robert replied, his eyes never leaving the surveillance feed. It's time for Phase 2. Over the next 2 weeks, Robert Caldwell became Preston Wallace's new best friend. They met for drinks, discussed investment opportunities, and shared increasingly sensitive information about Preston's charitable foundation. Meanwhile, through Benjamin's connections, Robert made strategic moves in the financial markets, subtly undermining Sentinel Security Solutions stock value, making the company appear vulnerable just as Audrey was assuming control. The board is getting nervous, Benjamin reported after a clandestine meeting with a Sentinel executive. Your death created instability, and now these market fluctuations. They're pushing for a quick sale to stabilize the situation. And let me guess, Preston has positioned himself as the ideal buyer? Through a consortium of investors, yes. The offer comes tomorrow. Robert smiled coldly. Right on schedule. 2 days later, Robert met Preston at an exclusive club in downtown Boston. Preston was practically glowing with triumph. The deal is all but done, he boasted over aged scotch. Sentinel will be mine by the end of the month. Audrey played her part perfectly. Just enough resistance to appear proper, but ultimately persuaded that selling is the best option. Quite the team you two make, Robert observed. Known each other long? We have history, Preston replied with a smirk. Let's just say Audrey has always had excellent taste in men and in opportunities. And her mother? Where does she fit in? Vivian? The mastermind in many ways. She sees the angles, identifies the targets. A brilliant woman, if somewhat terrifying. Preston laughed. I almost feel sorry for Max Riker. The poor bastard never stood a chance. Robert raised his glass in a toast. To those who never see the knife coming. That night, Robert initiated the next phase of his plan. Using access codes provided by Benjamin, he transferred incriminating financial records from Preston's foundation to a secure server. These records detailed money laundering operations, connections to organized crime, and, most damning, the conspiracy to murder Max and Lucas Riker. The evidence is comprehensive, Benjamin confirmed after reviewing the files. But will it be enough? People like Preston have escaped justice before. This isn't about justice, Robert replied. It's about vengeance. The following day, Robert arranged a private dinner with Preston at an upscale restaurant. As they discussed the finalization of the Sentinel acquisition, Robert slipped a small flash drive across the table. What's this? Preston asked, picking it up. Insurance, Robert replied. I've been doing some research on your foundation. Fascinating financial architecture. Preston's expression hardened. I'm not sure I understand. Let me be clear then. I know everything. The money laundering, the criminal connections, and most interestingly, your involvement in the deaths of Max and Lucas Riker. Preston's hand moved toward his jacket, but Robert shook his head slightly. Don't. My associate at the bar has been recording our conversation. Any aggressive move would be inadvisable. What do you want? Preston asked, his voice barely controlled. Initially, $100 million. Consider it an entry fee for my silence. That's absurd. I don't have that kind of liquid capital. Robert smiled coldly. You will, once the signal acquisition is complete. You have 24 hours to decide. As Robert left the restaurant, he could feel Preston's eyes boring into his back. The trap was set, the bait taken. Now the real game could begin. Chapter 6. The Depth of Deceit. Preston Wallace was not a man accustomed to being threatened. By midnight, he had assembled his inner circle. Audrey, Vivian, and 2 trusted associates with connections to less legitimate enterprises. Who the hell is Robert Caldwell? Preston demanded, pacing Audrey's living room. I've had my people digging all night. His background checks out, but it's too perfect. Something's not right. Maybe he's law enforcement? Audrey suggested, her composure cracking for the first time since the accident. No, cops don't ask for payoffs. This is something else. From his hotel room, Robert watched their panic through the hidden cameras. The sight of Audrey's fear gave him a satisfaction he hadn't anticipated. The next morning, Robert received a text from Preston. Deal accepted. Meet tonight to discuss terms. The meeting location was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Boston. Preston's choice, predictably cliché. Robert arrived early, carefully examining the building's layout. As expected, Preston had men positioned throughout. 2 at the main entrance, 1 on the catwalk above, another near a side exit. Robert entered at precisely the appointed time, walking confidently into what Preston clearly intended as an ambush. Mr. Caldwell. Preston called from the center of the warehouse floor. I'm glad you could make it. Did you bring the initial payment? Robert asked, approaching steadily. About that, I've decided to propose an alternative arrangement. On cue, Preston's men emerged from their positions, weapons drawn. Robert stopped, appearing surprised, but not frightened. Is this really necessary? He asked calmly. I think it is, Preston replied. You see, I don't respond well to blackmail. It tends to encourage more of the same. A pity. I thought we could resolve this like businessmen. Preston laughed harshly. Oh, this is business. My business. And the first rule is eliminate threats permanently. Interesting philosophy, Robert commented. Max Riker might have agreed with you. Something in Robert's tone made Preston pause. What do you know about Riker? Everything, Robert replied, his voice changing subtly. I know how you plotted with his wife and mother-in-law to kill him and his son for his money. I know you celebrated their deaths. And I know something you don't. And what's that? Preston asked, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Robert smiled, and for the first time, Preston saw something familiar in his eyes. They didn't die. Before Preston could process this, the warehouse plunged into darkness. The sounds that followed were precise and methodical. Grunts of pain, bodies falling, and finally, silence. When emergency lights flickered on, Preston found himself alone with Robert, his men unconscious or restrained on the floor. Who are you? Preston whispered, genuine fear in his voice. Robert stepped closer, allowing Preston to really see his face. Despite the surgical alterations, something in the eyes, the cold, calculated rage, triggered recognition. No, Preston breathed. It's not possible. Disappointingly predictable. Robert, Max said softly. The abandoned warehouse. The armed thugs. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate every move you'd make? If you're going to kill me, just do it, Preston said, attempting bravado. Kill you? No. Death is too quick, too merciful. Max circled Preston slowly. I'm going to destroy you, piece by piece. Everything you value, your reputation, your freedom, your foundation, your relationship with Audrey, all of it will be systematically dismantled. You can't prove anything. I already have. Your foundation's records have been delivered to select law enforcement agencies and media outlets. By morning, your entire operation will be exposed. Preston lunged suddenly, a hidden knife flashing in his hand. Max sidestepped effortlessly, using Preston's momentum to slam him into a concrete pillar. 15 years of naval intelligence work, Max explained conversationally as Preston struggled to breathe. Did Audrey ever mention that? Or was she too busy planning my murder to discuss my resume? I never loved you. Preston gasped, blood trickling from his mouth. She was always mine. Then you deserve each other. Max replied. The question is, will her love survive when everything else is gone? Max zip-tied Preston's hands and left him slumped against the pillar. On his way out, he placed a phone call to Benjamin. It's done. Proceed with Phase 3. At the Riker mansion, Audrey paced nervously, waiting for word from Preston. The grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight, then 1, then 2. At precisely 3:07 a.m., every light in the house suddenly blazed on. Every television, every computer screen, even the digital picture frames, all activated simultaneously, displaying the same image. Security footage of Audrey and Vivian pushing Max and Lucas over the railing of the yacht. Audrey screamed, backing away from the nearest screen. Vivian emerged from her room, equally horrified. What's happening? She demanded. Before Audrey could respond, their phones chimed with simultaneous text messages. Did you really think I wouldn't have cameras on my own boat? The game has changed. Check the news in the morning. As promised, the morning brought chaos. Preston Wallace's arrest made national headlines. Money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit murder. His foundation was exposed as a criminal enterprise, his political aspirations destroyed in an instant. More shocking to Boston society was the connected investigation into the presumed deaths of Max and Lucas Riker, now classified as attempted murder, with Audrey and Vivian named as persons of interest. By noon, the police were at the Riker mansion with search warrants. By evening, mother and daughter were being questioned in separate rooms at Boston Police Headquarters, their carefully constructed alibis crumbling under the weight of evidence. From a secure location, Max watched the news coverage with Benjamin and Sophie. Daddy, Lucas called from the playground, visible through the window. Come see my castle. Be right there, buddy, Max called back, his expression softening momentarily before hardening again as he turned to Benjamin. Are we ready for the final phase? Benjamin nodded grimly. Everything is in place. But Max, Robert, are you sure about this? It's extreme, even considering what they did. They tried to kill my son, Max replied, his voice devoid of emotion. There's no punishment extreme enough for that. Chapter 7. Rising from the Depths. The legal system moved with unusual speed in the case against Preston Wallace, Audrey Riker, and Vivian Prescott. Overwhelming evidence, public outrage, and persistent media coverage created pressure for swift justice. Preston, hoping to mitigate his sentence, had turned on Audrey and Vivian, providing detailed testimony about their conspiracy. His cooperation earned him little mercy, 25 years without possibility of parole. For Audrey and Vivian, the situation was even more dire. Their trial, scheduled to begin in 3 weeks, carried potential life sentences. Released on exorbitant bail while awaiting trial, they found themselves pariahs in the society that had once embraced them. Meanwhile, a legal conundrum captivated legal experts nationwide. If Max and Lucas Riker were alive, where were they? Without their testimony or bodies, the case against Audrey and Vivian rested on circumstantial evidence and Preston's self-serving testimony. Max, still known to the world as Robert Caldwell, monitored these developments from his new headquarters, a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. Lucas, adapting with the resilience of childhood, had embraced their new life, though he often asked when they could stop pretending and go home. Soon, buddy, Max promised, though home would never again be the mansion in Boston. 3 days before the trial was set to begin, Max implemented the next phase of his plan. A package was delivered to Teresa Blackwood, the lead prosecutor on the case, containing irrefutable evidence of Max and Lucas's survival, their current identities, and a sworn affidavit detailing the attempted murder. Simultaneously, similar packages arrived at the offices of major news networks. The revelation exploded across headlines nationwide. Riker resurrection. Presumed dead businessman and son alive, living under new identities. At the prosecutor's office, Teresa Blackwood studied the evidence with mounting excitement. This was the smoking gun that would ensure convictions. She immediately filed motions to compel testimony from Max/Robert. In his penthouse, Max fielded calls from Benjamin, who monitored the legal proceedings. They're demanding you testify, Benjamin reported. Blackwood is pushing hard. As expected, Max replied. Set up the meeting, but under my conditions. 2 days later, Max sat across from Teresa Blackwood in a secure room at the federal building. His appearance had been further altered. Different hair, glasses, subtle makeup to change his facial structure just enough to maintain his Robert Caldwell identity while allowing hints of Max Riker to show through. Mr. Riker, or do you prefer Caldwell now? Blackwood began. Caldwell, please. Max Riker is legally dead, and I prefer to keep it that way. That complicates matters. This case will proceed without my physical testimony, Max interrupted firmly. I provided sworn statements, evidence, everything you need for convictions. My son and I will not appear in court. May I ask why? Your testimony would be compelling. My son has been traumatized enough. I won't subject him to a trial where he'd have to face the woman who tried to kill him. As for me, I have my reasons. Blackwood studied him carefully. You're planning something, aren't you? Something beyond the legal system. Max's expression remained neutral. Justice takes many forms, Ms. Blackwood. I'm sure you understand that. Whatever you're planning will occur after your case is concluded, one way or another. I've given you everything you need for justice within the system. What happens beyond that is not your concern. As Max left the meeting, his phone buzzed with a text from an anonymous number. Please don't do this. We need to talk. Ugh. Max smiled coldly. Audrey was getting desperate. That evening, against Benjamin's advice, Max agreed to meet Audrey at a public park. He arrived early, securing vantage points and escape routes, habits from his former life that now served his new purpose. Audrey appeared at precisely the appointed time, looking haggard and afraid, a shadow of the confident woman who had planned his murder. I almost didn't recognize you, she said as she sat beside him on the bench. The changes are significant. That was the point. How did you survive? The water was freezing. You were miles offshore. I was always better prepared than you gave me credit for, Max replied. Always more capable. Audrey's eyes filled with tears. Max, Robert, whatever you're calling yourself now, I know what I did was unforgivable. But please, if any part of you ever loved me, don't. Max cut her off, his voice deadly quiet. Don't pretend this is about emotion. You need something from me, so get to it. The prosecutor offered a deal. 15 years if I testify against my mother. She claims the plan was all Vivian's idea, that I was coerced. And was it? Audrey looked away. Does it matter? No one forced me to push you and Lucas over that railing. I did that. But Max, 15 years. I'll be an old woman when I get out. If you get out, Max corrected her. The deal hasn't been finalized, has it? That's why you're here. I need you to tell them you won't testify against me specifically, that you didn't see who pushed you, that it could have been only my mother. Max laughed, a sound devoid of humor. You tried to kill our son, and now you want me to help you avoid responsibility? He's alive. You both survived. Please, Max. You know what Lucas asked me yesterday? He wanted to know why his mommy wanted him to die. How do I answer that, Audrey? Tears streamed down Audrey's face. I wasn't thinking clearly. Preston and Mother, they convinced me. Stop lying, Max said softly. I have recordings of every conversation, every plan you made, every celebration after you thought we were dead. I know exactly who you are. Then why meet me at all? Why not just let the trial proceed? Max stood, looking down at her with cold detachment. Because I wanted you to know that what happens next isn't just the justice system at work. It's me, Audrey. Everything that's coming. The complete destruction of your life, your future, your very identity. It's all by my design. What are you going to do? She whispered. Watch the news tomorrow. Then the next day. Then the next. You spent a year planning my death. I've spent months planning something far worse for you. Your living death. As Max walked away, Audrey called after him, her voice breaking. You can't do this. Whatever you're planning, it won't bring you peace. Max paused, turning slightly. Peace was never the objective. Justice was. And justice, Audrey, is ruthless. Chapter 8. Torrents of Truth. The morning of the trial, Boston woke to shocking news. Detailed financial records showing Audrey had been siphoning money from children's charities connected to Sentinel Security for years before meeting Preston. The evidence suggested a pattern of behavior predating her marriage to Max. By midday, additional revelations emerged about Vivian's psychiatric practice. Allegations from former patients claiming she had manipulated vulnerable individuals for financial gain, sometimes in collaboration with her daughter. Inside the courtroom, Audrey and Vivian watched their carefully constructed lives disintegrate. Their attorneys scrambled to address the new allegations, only to be blindsided by more damning evidence with each passing hour. From his secure location, Max orchestrated the systematic destruction of their reputations. Benjamin had assembled a team of investigators who had spent months uncovering every secret, every misdeed, every skeleton in their closets. The prosecution is incorporating the new evidence, Benjamin reported. Blackwood is going for maximum sentences for both of them. Good, Max replied, watching Lucas build a Lego structure on the living room floor. What about the offshore accounts? Frozen as of an hour ago. The seizure orders went through without a hitch. The trial proceeded with unprecedented speed and media attention. Preston Wallace's testimony, combined with the yacht surveillance footage and the mountain of newly discovered evidence, left little room for doubt. On the third day, Audrey's attorney approached the prosecution with a desperate plea deal offer. Blackwood, following Max's guidance delivered through carefully placed intermediaries, rejected it outright. No deals, she told the defense attorney. Your client tried to murder a child. She'll serve every day of whatever sentence the judge imposes. By the trial's end, both Audrey and Vivian had been convicted on all counts. The judge, noting the unconscionable betrayal and cold-blooded calculation involved, sentenced Audrey to 30 years and Vivian to 25. As they were led from the courtroom, Audrey caught sight of a man observing from the back row, Robert Caldwell, watching him passively as she was taken away in handcuffs. That evening, Max received a visit from Teresa Blackwood at his penthouse. Justice was served today, she noted, accepting the offered glass of wine. Though I suspect your version of justice is just beginning. The legal system did its part, Max acknowledged. But some crimes deserve more comprehensive consequences. I'm not sure I want to know what you mean by that. Plausible deniability is a valuable commodity in your position, Ms. Blackwood. She studied him carefully. The financial revelations, the patient testimonies against Vivian. That was all you're doing, wasn't it? You've been systematically dismantling their lives beyond what the law could accomplish. Max neither confirmed nor denied her assertion. I believe in thoroughness. And what about your son, Lucas? How is he coping with all this? Children are remarkably resilient, especially when protected from unnecessary trauma. He knows his mother did something terrible and won't be part of our lives anymore. The details can wait until he's older. And you? Will Max Riker ever return from the dead? Max shook his head. Max Riker served his purpose. Robert Caldwell has a promising future ahead, one without the complications of a resurrection. After Blackwood departed, Max reviewed the latest reports from his investigators. Audrey and Vivian had been transferred to separate federal facilities. Preston Wallace was already serving his sentence at a maximum security prison in Colorado. The financial transfers are complete, Benjamin confirmed over their secure line. Everything has been redirected according to your instructions. Any other matter? In progress. The first disclosure happens tomorrow. Max nodded, a grim satisfaction settling over him. Perfect. The next morning, inmates at the federal correctional facility where Audrey was being held received an unusual notification. Substantial deposits had been made to the commissary accounts of every prisoner except Audrey Riker. A note accompanied the facility-wide announcement, courtesy of Audrey Riker's victims. She believes herself better than you. Show her she's wrong. Similar arrangements had been made at Vivian's facility. Within hours, mother and daughter, separated by hundreds of miles, found themselves targets of coordinated hostility from their fellow inmates. Meanwhile, a series of anonymous donations appeared in Lucas's name to children's organizations nationwide. Millions of dollars dedicated to protecting vulnerable youth, particularly those affected by parental betrayal. Is this part of the plan? Benjamin asked when Max showed him the donation confirmations. Something constructive should come from this tragedy, Max replied. Lucas will never know the complete truth about his mother, but someday he'll understand that his survival helped others. That night, as Lucas slept peacefully in his new bedroom, Max stood at the penthouse window overlooking the city lights. The vengeance he had orchestrated was comprehensive, meticulous, and utterly without mercy, just like the betrayal that had precipitated it. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You've won. They're destroyed. When does it end? Ugh. Max deleted the message without responding. For Audrey, Vivian, and Preston, there would be no end to the consequences. Only a lifetime of suffering proportionate to what they had planned for him and his son. Justice, in Max Riker's world, was indeed ruthless. Chapter 9, New Tides. 1 year later, Robert Caldwell had become a respected figure in financial circles, known for his shrewd investments and generous philanthropic activities. His security consulting firm, Phoenix Protection, specialized in helping high-net-worth individuals safeguard themselves against elaborate threats, particularly those from trusted insiders. Lucas, now 6, had adapted fully to their new life. He attended an exclusive private school under the name Lucas Caldwell, where he was known as a bright, somewhat reserved boy with a particular talent for swimming. He's thriving, Sophie reported during her monthly assessment. She had transitioned from nanny to household manager, overseeing Lucas's education and well-being while Max/Robert built their new life. The nightmares have stopped completely. He hasn't mentioned his mother in over 2 months. And the therapist's evaluation? Dr. Winters believes he's processing the trauma appropriately. She recommends continuing the current approach, honest answers to his questions without volunteering disturbing details. Max nodded, satisfied. And the security protocols? Maintained rigorously. The school staff remain vigilant, though there's been no suspicious activity. Sophie hesitated before adding, he asked about the ocean yesterday, whether we could visit the beach this summer. A shadow crossed Max's face. The ocean held complicated associations now, but he wouldn't allow his son's life to be limited by fear. Make the arrangements, he decided. Somewhere private. Martha's Vineyard, perhaps. Later that day, Max received his regular update from Benjamin about their ongoing monitoring of Audrey, Vivian, and Preston. Wallace was hospitalized again, Benjamin reported. 3rd attack since his incarceration. He'll recover, but his request for protective custody was denied again. And the women? Vivian has been moved to the psychiatric ward. The isolation and harassment triggered a legitimate breakdown. As for Audrey, Benjamin paused. She attempted suicide last week. Unsuccessful, obviously. Max absorbed this information without visible reaction. Maintain the protocols. No direct intervention, but continued monitoring. For how long? Indefinitely. That evening, as Max helped Lucas with a science project, a model of ocean currents, his secure phone rang with a call from Teresa Blackwood. I thought you should know, she said without preamble. There's been a development in the Riker case. Max tensed. What kind of development? Audrey Riker is offering new information. Claims there were others involved in the conspiracy beyond the 3 convicted parties. Is there any evidence supporting this? None that we've found, Blackwood replied. It appears to be a desperate attempt to leverage a sentence reduction. But I wanted to warn you. She's specifically claiming that Robert Caldwell was part of the original conspiracy who then double-crossed the others. Max considered this new complication. How seriously is this being taken? Not very. Her credibility is non-existent, and there's no evidence connecting Robert Caldwell to any conspiracy. Still, there may be some preliminary investigation. I appreciate the warning, Max said. Keep me informed of any developments. After ending the call, Max joined Lucas in the living room, where the boy was watching a documentary about marine life. Daddy, Lucas said without looking away from the screen, do you think fish remember things like people do? That's an interesting question. Some fish have surprising memory capabilities, though different from humans. Why do you ask? Lucas shrugged. I was just thinking about memories. Sometimes I remember things that don't make sense. Max felt a chill. Like what, buddy? Like sometimes I remember Mom saying mean things, but then I think maybe it was just a bad dream. Lucas turned to face his father. Was Mom a bad person? Is that why she's gone? Max sat beside his son, choosing his words carefully. Your mother made some very bad choices that hurt people. She's paying the consequences for those choices now. Will I ever see her again? No, Lucas. That part of our life is over. The boy nodded, seeming relieved rather than saddened. I like our life now better anyway. You're happier now, Daddy. The observation struck Max deeply. Was he happier now? The rage that had fueled his elaborate revenge had subsided, replaced by a vigilant determination to protect his son and their new life. Perhaps that was a form of happiness, or at least peace. The next morning, Max met with his legal team to address Audrey's new allegations. Though the claims were unlikely to gain traction, he wouldn't leave anything to chance. We need contingencies, he told Benjamin afterward. If there's even a remote possibility of connecting Robert Caldwell to Max Riker, we need to be prepared. We've maintained the separation meticulously, Benjamin assured him. The surgical alterations, the documentation, all of it is bulletproof. Nevertheless, prepare the secondary protocol. If necessary, Robert Caldwell can disappear as thoroughly as Max Riker did. That evening, Max reviewed the financial reports from the remains of Sentinel Security Solutions. After the scandal, the company had been restructured under new leadership, with a significant portion of the profits directed to a trust for Lucas, accessible when he turned 25. Everything had been meticulously arranged to secure his son's future, regardless of what happened to Max/Robert. Multiple identities, offshore accounts, trusted guardians with clear instructions. Lucas would never be vulnerable again. A notification appeared on Max's secure tablet. Audrey's latest appeal had been denied. Her allegations against Robert Caldwell had been dismissed as fabrications from a desperate convict. Max closed the notification, feeling not triumph, but a quiet finality. The chapter was closing. The vengeance was complete. 3 days later, Max took Lucas to a private beach on Martha's Vineyard. The boy approached the ocean cautiously at first, then with growing confidence as his father stayed close beside him. The water's not scary, Lucas declared, splashing in the gentle waves. No, it's not, Max agreed. Not when you respect it and understand it. As they built an elaborate sand fortress at the water's edge, Max reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The betrayal, the fall, the calculated revenge. All of it had transformed him in ways he was still discovering. The fortress complete, Lucas looked up at his father with pride. Will it last, Daddy? Max gazed at the sand structure, knowing the tide would eventually reclaim it. Nothing lasts forever, buddy, but we've made it strong. It will stand against a lot before it falls. Later, watching the sunset from their beach house deck, Max received a final text from Benjamin. Confirmed. AR transferred to maximum security after latest incident. VP undergoing psychiatric evaluation, prognosis poor. PW denied medical parole. All monitoring systems functioning. Assets secure. Max deleted the message and turned off his phone. Lucas was pointing excitedly at dolphins playing in the distance. Look, Daddy, remember you told me dolphins know things about the sea that humans never will. I remember, Max replied, smiling at his son's flawless recall. What's the most important thing they know? Lucas asked. Max considered the question before answering. I think they know that survival isn't just about being strong or smart. It's about adaptation, becoming what you need to be when the waters change. Lucas nodded solemnly, as if the answer made perfect sense to his 6-year-old mind. Like us, right? We adapted. Exactly like us. Max agreed, pulling his son close as the dolphins continued their graceful dance against the setting sun. The fortress they had built would soon be claimed by the tide. But Max and Lucas Hargrove, now the Caldwells, had built something far more enduring, a new life secured by the ruthless justice that had transformed them both. Some betrayals can never be forgiven. Some debts can only be paid in full measure. And some men, when pushed into the depths, don't drown. They emerge as something far more dangerous than what went under. The ocean knows this truth. So do those who survive its cold embrace. And there you have it, Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.